I witnessed something in the emergency room that has haunted me every day. I have not shared this with anyone until now. I woke up with a pounding headache and a dry mouth one morning. Not an uncommon morning condition for my college days. I looked around the unfamiliar bedroom until I found my phone. It was 11 a.m. on Sunday. I sat on the edge of the bed and began to put my clothes on. I noticed I was not alone, and my heart started to race as I attempted to recall the previous night's drunken events. To my relief, I recognized the girl next to me as one of my friends when she rolled over in discomfort from the sunlight. I grabbed my shoe and started to put it on. Something was wrong. White-hot pain shot up my leg as the inside of the shoe made contact with my big toe. I winced as I forced the Nike sneaker over my swollen foot. I threw my jacket on and made my way to the door, but I immediately fell to the floor as soon as I put pressure on my right foot. I heard a burst of laughter from the girl behind me. "Still a little drunk, huh?" "No, my foot is killing me. I think something is wrong." "What did you do to it? You were fine last night when you were running around downtown." I tried to recall the memory of my previous day. "Oh shit, I was running? I got my big toenail removed because of that soccer injury from the intramural game. The doctor told me to take it easy. I must have not thought about it when I was drinking. My foot is still numb from the anesthetic." "Ouch. We'll go home and take care of it." I sighed, said goodbye, and left. Being a dumb college kid, I limped back the entire 2 miles back to the shack my college roommates and I called home. I immediately sat down and started drinking to curb the hangover, and it wasn't until later that night that someone decided to talk some sense into me. We had friends over and one girl who happened to be pre-med noticed my limping. "What happened to you?" "I had minor surgery on my foot and it just hurts. I could barely put my shoe on this morning." She got closer and looked at my leg. "Oh my god, you need to get to the hospital. You see those red streaks running up your leg? That's blood poisoning." She grabbed my arm and rushed me to her car. She was nice enough to drop me off at the front door of the ER. Half drunk, I limped inside and was immediately wheeled back to her room. This began the strangest night of my life. The ER of the university hospital was especially crowded. I was put into a room that was already occupied, with a plastic curtain separating me from the other patients. The occupants of the room caught my attention. There was an unconscious man on the other bed, stiff as a board and drained of all color. Next to his bed was a woman, extremely thin with a sunken face and tattered gray hair, and looked like she hasn't slept in years. She sat frozen in her chair. Standing in front of the couple was a tall male nurse, an EMT, and a police officer. The woman gazed forward with a blank stare as the cop spoke to her. "Ma'am, you need to tell us what your boyfriend took. He is likely going to die, but we'll be able to save him if you just tell us. We want to hear it in English. Can you do that?" The woman didn't respond. The interrogation went on like that for a while, and the woman continued to stare forward with her unwavering gaze. Finally, my nurse came in and began to hook me up to an IV. She spoke quietly to me. "This should help with the infection, and will help sober you up a bit." I looked at her, and she winked at me. She leaned in and whispered to me, "Sorry about the patients next to us. Try to ignore them if you can." She returned to her normal volume. "The hospital's pretty crazy tonight, so the resident doctors wants me to work on this infection out of your foot. You're lucky this didn't reach your lymph nodes, because sepsis is no joke. I am going to have to make an incision on your toe and drain the infection out, but I'll numb you with a local anesthetic first." I grimaced as she stuck the long needle into my toe. "I'll be back in 15 minutes when you're numbed." I looked out into the hall as she walked out. I noticed another police officer just outside, and he was talking with the priest. It was not uncommon to see priests around campus. The university was Catholic, but I found it strange that he was right outside my hospital room. The man on the bed next to me has not moved. Maybe he was going to die, and they were going to read him his last rites? My heart was racing. I have never witnessed a death before. I turned my gaze from the hall to the curtain next to me. Just behind it was this strange woman, but she was now staring directly at me with her dull, gray eyes. I quickly turned away from her, but I felt her eyes pierce through me as an ice shiver crept down my spine. My nurse returned and started setting up her prep table. She sterilized her scalpel at my toe and began cutting. I couldn't look. I'd never been very good with that sort of thing. Without thinking, I turned my head to the right again, and the woman was still staring at me. As soon as our eyes met, I had the strangest vision. It was like I was daydreaming, but it was so vivid. I imagined myself taking the scalpel and stabbing the nurse with it over and over again. I heard the sounds of her screams and saw the horrific bloody mess, and in shock I yelled out loud. "No!" I snapped out of the daydream. I was horrified with what I had just imagined. I was not a violent person at all, and I had never even thought about doing anything that graphic in my life. My stomach began to turn with nausea. Concerned with my outburst, the nurse asked me if I was okay. I told her I was, and she continued. I looked at my right again at the withered woman. She was still staring at me, but now she was smiling an eerie white smile. It was like she was amused at my discomfort. I turned away and decided not to look back. The nurse finished, wrapped my foot, and told me she would be back later to check on me. As she left, more medical personnel entered and wheeled away the man who was on the bed. They had draped a sheet over his body. The police officer and the priest walked in and closed the door. The priest gave me a slight nod as he walked by. I noticed my cross necklace was exposed through my hospital gown. The two men walked behind the curtain. I could hear something strange, and after a moment I jolted in fright when I realized what it was. The woman started hissing and screaming as soon as she saw the priest, and over her racket I barely heard the police officer speak. "Cut that out or I will arrest you." The priest interjected. "No need for that at the moment. Miss Byer, my name is Father DeMarco." I heard the woman spit. He spoke again, but this time it was a different language. I hadn't been in church in a while, but some of the Latin caught my ear. I heard nomine, which I know means name. To my amazement, she responded. The words hissed out of her mouth at an incredible rate. She spoke in Latin, just as the priest had. When she stopped, the cop spoke. "This is how she was talking when we found her, Father. What's she saying?" The priest replied, "I need you to leave us. Take the boy." The cop nodded reluctantly, then made his way over to me. "Let's go to the other room, son. This woman has been through a lot tonight." I was happy to leave. I just wanted to get out of there, and I eagerly got out of my bed and climbed onto my wheelchair. Just as I was leaving, she spoke again, causing the officer to a halt. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as the woman spoke out loud, this time in English. "Your mother misses you, David." Then she let out the most terrifying laughter I have ever heard. As the cop wheeled me out of the room, I could hear her maniacal laughter trailing off behind me, my anxiety spiking from the weirdness of the whole thing. My eyes welled up with tears as I reflected on two things. First, my mother took her own life a few years ago. Second, and even more disturbing, none of the medical staff in that room had said David out loud. Word buzzed around campus the next morning. 5 medical personnel were murdered that night. The faculty wouldn't give the students any details, except to be on the lookout for a thin woman who had a sunken face and tattered gray hair.